On a Prayer, Faith is Awaken by Elton Thomas. Episode 28, New Beginnings. The sun filtered gently through the tall windows of the small coffee shop, casting a warm glow over the polished wooden tables and the potted plants lining the windowsills. Roxy sat by the window, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea, watching the people outside move along the streets of St. Louis. The air was crisp with the promise of autumn, the leaves on the trees beginning to turn shades of gold and amber. For the first time in a long time, Roxy felt something she hadn't known in years. Peace. Real peace. The kind that settled deep in her chest, quieting the ever-present hum of anxiety that had followed her for so long. She had been given a second chance, and she was finally ready to embrace it. Across from her, Lucy Embry sat with a gentle smile on her face, sipping her coffee as she glanced out the window. The two women had met here every week since Jackson's trial, each time feeling the bond between them grow stronger. What had started as tentative conversations had blossomed into something more, a sisterhood forged through shared pain, healing, and the steady rhythm of faith. "I can't believe how far we've come," Roxy said softly, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup. "There was a time when I thought I'd never feel safe again. Never feel free." Lucy nodded, her eyes warm and understanding. "I know that feeling. It takes time. But you're here now, Roxy. You've made it through the hardest part." Roxy smiled, a small, almost shy smile that held the weight of her past and the hope of her future. "Sometimes it doesn't feel real," she admitted. "Like I'm still that woman in the alley, waiting for the next terrible thing to happen. But then I remind myself that I'm not her anymore. I survived, and I'm not just surviving. I'm living." Lucy reached across the table, resting her hand gently on Roxy's. "You are living," she said firmly. "And you deserve every bit of this second chance." Roxy's heart swelled at Lucy's words, the warmth of their friendship filling her with a sense of belonging she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just that Lucy understood her. Lucy had walked her own difficult path, and somehow, that made everything easier. They weren't just friends. They were sisters in spirit, bound by the hardships they had endured and the hope they had found on the other side. "Do you ever think about everything that's happened?" Roxy asked, her voice thoughtful. "I mean, how we got here. How much we've changed." Lucy's smile softened, her eyes distant for a moment. "All the time," she said quietly. "Especially when I think about the women I've met through my work. I've seen so many of them broken, just like you were, just like I was in my own way." Roxy's brow furrowed, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "You've never really talked about your work before. As a SANE nurse, I mean. What's it like?" Lucy sighed, her gaze dropping to the table for a moment as she collected her thoughts. "It's hard," she admitted. "Hard in ways I can't always explain. There are days when it feels like too much. But then there are moments when I know I'm making a difference, when I see a woman walk out of my office with her head held just a little higher, and those moments make it worth it." Roxy nodded, her fingers tightening around her cup. She had heard of SANE nurses before, sexual assault nurse examiners, women like Lucy who provided care for victims of sexual violence. But she had never really understood the toll it must take, the weight of carrying those stories, those traumas, every day. "Has it always been like that for you?" Roxy asked, her voice soft. "Working with Dusty? Seeing all those women?" Lucy smiled faintly, though there was a sadness in her eyes. "Dusty's brought me a lot of women over the years," she said, "each one with a story that would break your heart. But the hardest part isn't the examinations, or even the stories. It's knowing that so many of them don't get justice, that they leave my office and go back into a world that doesn't always protect them." Roxy's chest tightened, the weight of Lucy's words settling over her. "That's awful," she whispered. Lucy nodded, her expression thoughtful. "It is. But that's why I do what I do. Because for some of them, I'm the only person they can trust in that moment. I can't always change what happened to them, but I can be there for them. I can listen. I can care." Roxy felt a lump form in her throat, a wave of emotion washing over her. She had never fully realized how much Lucy carried, how much strength it took to face that kind of pain every day and still hold on to her faith. And through it all, Lucy continued, her voice softer now, my father has always been there for me. He's been my rock. After my brother Mike, after what happened to him, I didn't know if I could keep going. Roxy's heart skipped a beat. She had heard about Mike, how Jackson had manipulated him, how he had died after falling into Jackson's world of drugs and crime. But Lucy had never spoken about him like this, not with such raw emotion. Mike was a good person, Lucy said, her voice trembling slightly. He was kind, just like my father. But Jackson saw something in him, something he could use. And once Mike was in his grasp, there was nothing we could do. A tear slipped down Lucy's cheek, but she quickly wiped it away. It broke my father. He never showed it, not in front of anyone, but I saw it. I saw the way he prayed for Mike, the way he begged God for a miracle that never came. And when Mike died, I thought I would lose him too. But somehow, he held on. He kept his faith. And that's what kept me going. Roxy's chest tightened as she listened, her own emotions threatening to spill over. She had always seen Ethan as a pillar of strength, a man who never wavered in his faith. But hearing Lucy talk about him like this, seeing the pain he had carried, it made Roxy realize that even the strongest people weren't immune to suffering. I guess we're not so different, are we? Roxy said quietly, her voice trembling with emotion. We've all been through so much. We've all lost something. Lucy reached across the table again, taking Roxy's hand in hers. We have, she said gently, but we've also gained something. We've gained each other, and we've gained a second chance. Roxy smiled through her tears, a feeling of warmth and gratitude swelling in her chest. You're right, she whispered. We're not alone. Not anymore. The two women sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, the weight of their shared experiences hanging in the air between them. The bond they had formed, the sisterhood they had found, was something neither of them had expected. But it was real, and it was strong. I'm glad we have each other, Roxy said softly, her voice filled with quiet conviction. Me too, Lucy replied, her smile warm and genuine. We've come a long way, Roxy, and I think we've got a bright future ahead of us. Roxy nodded, her heart swelling with hope. She had spent so long living in fear, so long believing that the darkness would always find her. But now, for the first time, she saw a future without fear. A future where she could live, truly live, without looking over her shoulder. And that future wasn't just for her. It was for Lucy, for Dusty, for all of them. As they finished their tea and prepared to leave the coffee shop, Roxy looked out the window one last time, watching the world move on outside. The sun was setting, casting a soft glow over the city. It was a new beginning, not just for her, but for all of them. And this time, she wasn't afraid.